The UK's rental tribunal system is nearing an unprecedented collapse that could destabilize the housing market and harm both landlords and tenants. Waiting times for hearings may jump from 14 weeks to over 18 months, allowing tenants to exploit legal gaps and leaving landlords with heavy losses. Scotland's similar reform led to a 1,180% surge in tribunal cases, offering a clear warning for England. When the Renters' Rights Act begins on May 1st, tenants will be able to challenge any rent increase and legally continue paying the old rent during the tribunal delay. Even if landlords eventually win, backdated rent is unrecoverable. This could cost landlords hundreds or thousands, especially smaller ones dependent on rental income. With an already overstretched tribunal system and no significant government preparation, delays could reach a year or more, effectively making rent increases unenforceable. Landlords are responding by issuing Section 21 notices before the ban on no-fault evictions. Cities across England are seeing mass evictions, even of reliable tenants, as landlords try to avoid being trapped in unprofitable tenancies. A prisoner's dilemma arises. Tenants have every incentive to challenge rent increases since there is no penalty for doing so, pushing the tribunal system into exploitation instead of fairness. As delays grow, many landlords will exit the market, shrinking housing supply. Corporate investors will buy distressed properties and consolidate ownership, eventually driving rents higher and reducing affordable housing. The regions will feel this unevenly. London's rents may surge further, while northern and coastal areas may face landlord withdrawal and market instability. Despite clear warnings and Scotland's example, the government has provided no new tribunal funding or mitigation plans, raising concerns that the resulting landlord exodus may be politically convenient. The human costs are severe: displaced tenants, elderly landlords losing income, and potential job losses across property-related sectors. International investors, especially large U.S. funds, are preparing to capitalize, bringing profit-driven management and algorithmic rent setting that will overshadow tenants' short-term advantages from challenging rent increases. The crisis could unfold rapidly: tribunal flooding in June, severe delays by mid-year, bankruptcies by late summer, and a corporate-dominated rental sector by 2026. Local councils will face rising homelessness and strained services, undermining national goals to improve regional equality. Though solutions such as phased implementation, mediation requirements, and proper tribunal funding exist, political will is lacking. Without intervention, May 1st will mark the start of a predictable and preventable crisis that could reshape Britain's housing landscape for decades. If decisive action is not taken, the UK may soon confront a housing environment defined by instability, shrinking supply, and deepening inequality. Families will struggle to secure long-term homes, landlords will find the sector increasingly unviable, and frontline services will buckle under the weight of growing demand. The knock-on effects could reverberate across the wider economy, affecting workforce mobility, business investment, and community cohesion. In the absence of meaningful reform, the rental market risks entering a prolonged downward spiral in which confidence erodes, costs escalate, and trust between tenants and landlords collapses entirely. What is at stake is not merely a policy failure but the integrity of the UK's entire housing ecosystem. The coming months will determine whether the country can avert a full-scale housing emergency or whether it will allow structural pressures to harden into long-term national decline. If tribunal delays spiral as predicted, Britain may soon face one of the largest housing supply shocks in modern history. As small landlords exit, properties will be sold off, often to cash-ready corporations, narrowing the diversity of rental options. Tenants could face a future where local, approachable landlords are replaced by large firms operating with rigid systems, automated decisions, and higher profit margins. This transition could fundamentally alter the character of neighborhoods, replacing community-based renting with impersonal, investment-driven housing models. Communities will also feel cultural and social strain. Families uprooted by sudden evictions may find themselves moved miles away from schools, workplaces, and support networks. Young professionals already priced out of homeownership will be pushed into an increasingly competitive and corporatist rental system. Meanwhile, the dream of stable, affordable renting, once a cornerstone of UK housing, may fade entirely. If the government continues to ignore Scotland's warning signs and fails to invest in the tribunal system, the fallout could last a generation. The UK is standing at a crossroads. Act now and stabilize the rental sector, or do nothing and watch a cascading crisis permanently reshape the nation's housing landscape. The decision and its consequences will define the future of housing for millions. But the implications reach even further. A collapsing rental market could trigger a nationwide affordability shock, pushing more people into temporary accommodation, overstretching homelessness charities, and forcing councils to spend billions on emergency housing, money that could have supported schools, healthcare, and community development. As resources shift toward crisis response, other public services will inevitably decline, deepening social inequality and fueling public frustration. Politically, the consequences could be explosive. Housing already ranks as one of the top concerns for UK voters, and this crisis could ignite widespread backlash. Younger generations, already frustrated by years of rising rents and stagnant wages, may feel increasingly alienated from political institutions. Older generations relying on rental income may feel betrayed by sudden, destabilizing legislation. This divide risks fueling a growing generational tension that could reshape elections, policy priorities, and public trust in government. The economic ramifications could be equally severe. As landlords exit and corporations dominate the market, rent prices may become more volatile, driven by data algorithms rather than human judgment. This shift could inject instability into local economies, especially in cities reliant on tourism, students, or seasonal labor, causing job losses, business closures, and reduced consumer spending. Small businesses near large clusters of rental properties may feel the impact as transient tenants replace long-term residents who support local shops and services. Neighborhoods could change dramatically. Streets once filled with community life may become dominated by high-turnover rentals managed remotely from corporate headquarters. Antisocial behavior complaints may rise, and community cohesion could weaken as personal relationships between landlords and tenants disappear. In university towns, shortages of affordable accommodation could force students to commute long distances, reduce enrollments, or even drop out, affecting local economies and the education sector. The mental health impact must not be overlooked. Constant uncertainty about rent increases, tribunal outcomes, or possible eviction can create chronic stress for tenants. Landlords dealing with long-term financial losses, legal battles, and debt may experience anxiety, depression, or financial burnout. The housing crisis is not just an economic issue, it is a human one, touching families, livelihoods, and well-being across the country. Meanwhile, the private rental sector, which has long served as a safety net for those unable to buy, risks becoming inaccessible altogether. If corporate firms dominate and drive rents higher, low- and middle-income households could be pushed further away from job centers. Commutes will lengthen, transport networks will strain, and regional inequality will widen. London and the Southeast may become even more exclusive, while struggling northern cities face depopulation and decline. In the broader picture, the UK's competitiveness on the global stage could suffer. International businesses consider housing affordability when choosing where to locate. A dysfunctional or overly expensive rental market could deter investment, reduce talent inflow, and undermine economic growth. This crisis is not inevitable, but every day without intervention brings the country closer to irreversible damage. Strengthening the tribunal system, balancing tenant protections with landlord viability, and ensuring sustainable rental practices are essential to preventing a full-scale collapse. If this warning goes unheeded, the UK may look back on 2025 as the year the rental market broke, and the year Britain failed to act.